No one ever knew why I disappeared that night. No one ever asked what it cost me. My name is Ruth Evelyn Carter. I am 81 years old. For most of my life, I worked as a seamstress in a small garment factory in Savannah, Georgia. It was quiet work, long hours, sore fingers, and the constant hum of machines, but it paid just enough to survive. I never dreamed big. I just dreamed of peace. But peace was something I never truly had. I was 19 when everything changed. 19, scared and already married to a man everyone admired and no one truly knew. Thomas Carter looked perfect to the outside world. Church on Sundays. A steady job. Polite smiles. But behind closed doors, he was violent, unpredictable, and cruel. His anger came without warning, and his fists followed soon after. When I found out I was pregnant, I didn't feel joy. I felt fear. I prayed the baby would change him. It didn't. The abuse worsened. Shouting turned into broken furniture. Broken furniture turned into broken bones. And every night I lay awake with my hands over my stomach, whispering apologies to a child who hadn't even been born yet. I promised that baby one thing: you will never grow up afraid. When my son was born, I knew immediately I couldn't keep him. Not because I didn't love him, but because I loved him too much. Thomas hated the baby's cries. He would scream that the child was weak, that I was weak, that he would teach him discipline. One night I watched Thomas grab our newborn too roughly. That was the moment. The moment a mother becomes something dangerous, something decisive. I waited. I planned. I saved money in tiny amounts, hiding cash inside the lining of coats I stitched at work. And then one cold morning, I did the hardest thing a woman can ever do. I gave my baby away. The adoption was private, quiet, no paperwork that led back to me. The social worker asked, "Are you sure?" I couldn't speak. I just nodded. Because if I spoke, I would break. I named him Samuel before I handed him over. I kissed his forehead. I memorized his face. I breathed him in like oxygen. And then I walked away. I collapsed in the parking lot afterward and cried until I couldn't breathe. But he was safe. That was all that mattered. People judged me. They always do. Heartless. Cold. Unfit mother. No one knew the bruises under my sleeves. No one knew the nightmares. No one knew the promise I kept in silence. Years passed. I escaped Thomas not long after. He disappeared from my life the way poison sometimes does, suddenly without explanation. I never remarried. I never had another child. My heart had already done the hardest work it would ever do. I built a quiet life. I rented a small home. I worked. I volunteered at church. I smiled when people asked about children and said God had other plans. At night I wondered where Samuel was. Was he loved? Was he safe? Was he happy? I never tried to find him. Because love sometimes means knowing when not to return. Decades passed. My hair turned white. My hands grew stiff. My back bent from years of sewing. But my heart never forgot. When I got sick, the family I had left, distant cousins' nieces, moved me into a small assisted living apartment. They were polite, kind enough, but no one really knew me. No one knew my greatest sacrifice. One night, sorting through old papers, I found the only thing I had kept. A hospital bracelet. Tiny. Faded. With the name Baby Boy Carter. I held it and whispered, "I hope you're okay." I never imagined that after my death, the truth would come back. And when it did, it would change everything my family thought they knew about me. Helen felt dizzy. She never said, "I know," Samuel replied. She wasn't meant to. Samuel told them everything. He had grown up in a loving home, adopted by a couple who couldn't have children, educated, protected, encouraged. He never knew abuse, never knew fear. He became a lawyer, then an investor, then something more. Successful, respected, safe. All the things I had prayed for. But I always knew he said softly that someone saved me. When his adoptive mother passed, he began searching. Not to replace her, but to understand where he came from. It took years. Private investigators, court petitions, DNA records. When he finally found my name, he was too late. "I didn't come for money," Samuel said firmly. "I came to say thank you." Helen's voice shook. She lived so quietly. Samuel smiled sadly. She lived bravely, he said. You just didn't see the war? He asked to see my room. They took him there. The bed, the small dresser, the sewing kit. Samuel opened the bottom drawer. Inside was the hospital bracelet. The only thing I had kept? His hands trembled. I've carried this my whole life, he whispered, without ever knowing it. Then he did something no one expected. He knelt and cried. After a long silence, Samuel stood up. I want to do something, he said. For her. He paid for a headstone. Not a small one, a strong one. With words carved deep into stone, Ruth Evelyn Carter. A mother's love saved a life. But he wasn't finished. At the next family gathering, Samuel returned this time with lawyers. My family was nervous. They expected inheritance issues. They were wrong. Samuel established a foundation in my name. For abused women. For children in danger. For silent mothers making impossible choices. Millions were pledged. My quiet life had become a legacy. Why, Helen asked. Samuel looked at her steadily. Because the world should know, he said, that some heroes are never applauded. That night alone in his hotel room, Samuel held the old bracelet. I made it, he whispered. I'm okay. But there was one thing left. One thing he hadn't done. He visited my grave alone and spoke the words I never heard in life. Mom, I'm home. Some sacrifices are never seen. Some love stories are only understood after goodbye. After the foundation launch, my name began appearing in places I had never walked. Newspapers, charity events, courtrooms where Samuel spoke on behalf of abused women and forgotten children. People called me a hero. I had never felt like one. I had just been a scared young woman trying to protect a baby from a world that had already hurt me. Samuel stayed in Savannah longer than planned. He visited the hospital where I once worked as a night shift caregiver, the same job I held when I was 23, pregnant and trapped in a violent home. The records were still there. My name, my resignation letter, reason written in shaky ink. Personal safety concerns? The hospital administrator shook his head. She disappeared overnight, he said. We always wondered what happened to her. Samuel already knew. He visited the old shelter next. The building was gone, replaced by apartments. But one woman remained. Eleanor Brooks. 90 years old. Sharp memory. When Samuel showed her my photograph, Eleanor gasped. Ruth, she whispered. Oh my God, she did it, didn't she? Eleanor told him everything. How I arrived bruised and terrified. How I hid my pregnancy under loose sweaters. How the baby's father had threatened to kill the child if I kept him. How the adoption wasn't abandonment. It was escape. She cried for days, Eleanor said. But she never once asked to take him back. Samuel's voice broke. Why? Eleanor smiled sadly. She said if loving him means losing him, then I'll lose him. That sentence followed Samuel everywhere. Into boardrooms. Into court filings. Into quiet moments at night. Months later, the family gathered again, this time not out of obligation, but understanding. They sat together at my grave. Not embarrassed. Not defensive. Just quiet. Helen spoke first. We didn't really know her, she admitted. Samuel nodded. She didn't need to be known. She needed to be right. They stood in silence. Then Samuel placed something new beside my headstone. A framed photograph. Him at graduation. Smiling. Alive. Because of me. I hope you can forgive us, Helen whispered. The wind moved gently through the trees. Maybe that was my answer. Before leaving town, Samuel made one last decision. He legally changed his middle name. From James to Evelyn, in honor of the woman who never got to be called Mom. At the Foundation's first anniversary event, Samuel stood at the podium. Cameras flashing. Crowd silent. This foundation exists, he said, because one woman chose courage over comfort. He paused. She didn't raise me, but she saved me. And in that moment, my story became more than pain. It became proof. Proof that sacrifice echoes. Proof that love survives secrecy. Proof that even the quietest lives can change the world. That night, Samuel visited my grave one last time before flying home. I found you, he said softly, and I'll spend my life making sure others are found too. Final message. YouTube style. Some stories don't end when a life does. Some sacrifices bloom decades later. If this story moved you, if you believe quiet love matters, like this video, subscribe for more real-life emotional stories. Share, because someone out there needs this reminder that sometimes letting go is the greatest act of love.